The desert night was broken by a gunshot, echoing through the canyon as James Carter said, "Damn it, they found us." His voice carried both fear and determination as the sidekick Samuel Lee shouted, "We have to move now!" The moonlight revealed the barren land, shadows twisting like ghosts across the sand. Sheriff Douglas Kane stood at a distance, his cold gaze fixed on the horizon, muttering, "The outlaw will not escape this time." In the saloon nearby, Clara Dawson whispered, "The coyote's cry has returned, just as the curse warned." Every villager trembled as the wail of an unseen predator rose high in the air. From the shadows, old mentor Elias Boone stepped forward, his scarred hand gripping his rifle as he said, "This isn't the first time darkness has walked these lands." The winds howled through the canyon, lifting dust like restless spirits. The air turned heavy with dread as the cry of the coyote pierced deeper, unsettling even hardened men. In that instant, the story of betrayal, vengeance, and cursed blood began to unfold under the endless western sky. The dust storm swept into town, whirling sand through the narrow streets, rattling shutters, and choking the air. Samuel Lee said, "I've never heard a cry like that before. It feels like death riding on the wind." James Carter's eyes narrowed as he replied, "It's more than just a sound, boy. It's a curse that has walked this land longer than we have." Elias Boone placed a scarred hand on James' shoulder, murmuring, "The desert has its ghosts, and some don't rest easy, not when their blood was spilled unjustly." From across the street, Clara Dawson's silhouette lingered in the glow of a window, her voice almost breaking as she whispered, "The coyote's curse will take us all if we don't stop him before the sun falls." James clenched his jaw, muttering, "Then we'll stop him, curse or no curse, because if we don't, this town won't see another dawn." The saloon doors creaked open as Sheriff Douglas Kane entered with deliberate steps. He said, "This town will know order, even if I must deliver it with iron." James Carter leaned at the bar, replying coldly, "Order from you is nothing but chains." Clara Dawson's gaze lingered between them, her expression unreadable. Elias Boone exhaled heavily, whispering, "The desert has seen too many men fall to pride." Samuel Lee shifted uneasily, his hand never leaving his rifle as he muttered, "This is going to end bad." Outside, the howling grew stronger, rattling windows. Samuel Lee said, "It's coming closer." James Carter gripped his revolver, replying, "The desert wants blood tonight." Elias Boone scanned horizon, muttering, "I've seen curses take men apart, limb by limb." Clara Dawson's voice trembled as she whispered, "It started when the coyote was shot." Sheriff Douglas Kane smirked and said, "That was justice, not a curse." A sudden cry pierced the silence again, louder, closer. James Carter whispered, "It's here." Samuel Lee's rifle shook in his grip as he said, "We can't fight shadows." Elias Boone growled, "This shadow carries teeth." Clara Dawson stepped into street, declaring, "The curse began with betrayal. It will end the same." Sheriff Douglas Kane drew his revolver, sneering, "Then let's see whose blood it takes first." Dawn broke with a fiery sky as James Carter sat on the edge of the well, his face shadowed with regret. He muttered, "I've carried this curse longer than I admit." Samuel Lee said, "You mean it follows you?" James nodded slowly. "It follows blood and betrayal." Clara Dawson appeared behind them, her voice trembling. "My father spoke of it before he died. He said the coyote marked the guilty." Elias Boone leaned against a fence post, gruffly adding, "Your father wasn't wrong, girl. These curses grow from sins buried deep." Sheriff Douglas Kane strode through the dust, his boots clicking sharply as he said, "Curses are for cowards. Fear makes men see phantoms." James narrowed his eyes, whispering, "And greed blinds them." The wind carried the faint howl again, distant but sharp, making Samuel flinch. Clara's gaze locked on James, her voice heavy, "If you're tied to it, then so am I." The townsfolk gathered, whispering as Clara Dawson raised her voice, "The curse won't spare us unless truth comes out." Samuel Lee shouted, "Then speak it." James Carter clenched his fists, replying, "Not here, not now." Sheriff Douglas Kane barked, You'll speak or I'll drag it out of you. Elias Boone muttered, a man cornered by truth will fight harder than one cornered by bullets. The coyote's cry echoed faintly, freezing the crowd. James finally whispered, a betrayal brought this curse. And I was part of it. Clara gasped, you? James stared at the ground, unable to meet her eyes. James Carter's voice cracked as he said, years ago, we hunted a man accused of murder, but he was innocent. The coyote howled the night we buried him shallow. Samuel Lee whispered, and the curse? James replied, the curse is his vengeance carried on the wind. Clara Dawson's tears glistened as she said, my father was part of that hunt. Elias Boone lowered his head, admitting, so was I. Sheriff Douglas Kane's eyes hardened, spitting, he deserved it. Innocent men don't run. James' voice thundered, he ran because you framed him. Clara Dawson stepped forward, declaring, if truth is buried, this curse will never rest. Samuel Lee muttered, we must make it right. Elias Boone's voice rasped, you can't undo spilled blood, only answer for it. James Carter gripped his revolver, saying, then we'll answer it. Sheriff Douglas Kane sneered, you'd rather face shadows than me? Fool's choice. The howl cut through the rising sun, this time closer, sharper, like it was inside the town itself. Samuel cried, it's here! Clara whispered, the dead man's spirit has returned. Elias Boone growled, not spirit, vengeance. The ground quaked faintly as townsfolk screamed, running for shelter. James Carter shouted, stay together. Samuel Lee grabbed Clara's arm, saying, we can't fight it alone. Clara pushed free, yelling, this curse began with betrayal. It must end with confession. Elias Boone barked, confession won't stop a curse born of blood. Sheriff Douglas Kane raised his revolver, pointing it at James, snarling, then I'll end it my way. James stared into his enemy's eyes, whispering, you'll never silence the dead. The coyote's cry split the morning air, shaking every soul to its core. The sun climbed higher as the dust thickened, and James Carter stood at the edge of town, staring toward the canyon. He muttered, the curse grows louder with each hour. Samuel Lee replied, it feels like it wants to tear me apart. Clara Dawson whispered, it isn't just after you, James, it's after all who played their part. Elias Boone spat into the dirt, saying, blood debts don't fade with time, they sharpen. Sheriff Douglas Kane strode forward, sneering, this is nothing but guilt made flesh, and I'll crush it. James' voice trembled, your lies brought us here, Sheriff. Samuel shook his head, murmuring, and now we're paying the price. The wind shrieked through the canyon, carrying the coyote's cry, sharp enough to split stone. Clara clutched her shawl tightly, whispering, it's closer than before. Inside the church, candles flickered weakly, as Clara Dawson said, the curse is tied to the innocent buried without prayer. James Carter whispered, then prayers won't be enough. Elias Boone's voice cracked, I was the one who fired first that night. Samuel Lee gasped, you? Elias lowered his head, I believed the sheriff's lies. Sheriff Douglas Kane scowled, and lies they were not, the man was guilty. James roared, he was framed by you. Clara's tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, we must give him peace or face his wrath. The walls trembled with the faint echo of howls. The storm clouds rolled in, turning day into gloom. James Carter said, we must return to the canyon where it began. Samuel Lee protested, that's suicide. Clara Dawson stepped closer, saying, the dead don't rest until we face them. Elias Boone gripped his rifle, muttering, then we walk into the grave we dug. Sheriff Douglas Kane barked, you'll walk nowhere without my command. James spat, your command ended when you buried that man alive. Thunder cracked overhead, the sound echoing like rifle fire. Samuel whispered, it feels like the desert itself wants us dead. Clara said softly, it wants the truth. They rode out together under the darkening sky, dust whipping at their faces. James Carter muttered, the ground we stained with blood will judge us. Samuel Lee said, I never wanted this, but I'll stand with you. Clara Dawson's eyes narrowed. Then you'll see the truth that broke this town. Elias Boone coughed, whispering, every mile brings me closer to the face I can't forget. Sheriff Douglas Kane growled, if the dead rise, I'll put them down again. James turned, his voice sharp, you'll never silence vengeance with bullets. The horses snorted, nervous under the pressure of the storm. Coyote's cry ripped through the sky, closer than ever. The canyon walls loomed, echoing with ghostly cries. James Carter said, this is where it ends. Samuel Lee whispered, I can feel him here. Clara Dawson trembled. The air is heavy, like death itself. Elias Boone raised his rifle slowly, muttering, I've carried this guilt for too long. Sheriff Douglas Kane sneered, enough of this superstition, he was nothing but a thief. James' eyes burned, shouting, he was an innocent man. A sudden gust howled through the canyon, carrying a chilling voice that seemed neither alive nor dead. Samuel dropped to his knees, screaming, it's here with us. Clara whispered, the curse is awake. The canyon echoed with every step as James Carter said, this place is alive with his memory. Samuel Lee whispered, it feels like eyes are on us. Clara Dawson trembled. The air tastes like iron, thick with blood. Elias Boone's voice cracked, this is where I fired, where I damned us all. Sheriff Douglas Kane snarled, you damned yourself, old man. I only gave justice. James' voice thundered, justice, you buried an innocent. Samuel's hands shook as he muttered, the ground itself feels wrong. A sudden gust tore dust from the earth, swirling like spirits rising. Clara whispered, it's watching. James gripped his revolver tighter, his breath sharp, then let it see us. Lightning split the sky as Samuel Lee flinched, shouting, it's coming. Clara Dawson stepped forward, declaring, we must face it with truth, not guns. Elias Boone raised his rifle, muttering, sometimes truth needs steel. James Carter growled, steel won't silence what's already dead. Sheriff Douglas Kane smirked, then I'll use steel anyway. The coyote's howl ripped through the canyon, closer, piercing every ear. James lifted his revolver, but his hand shook as if weighed down. Clara whispered, don't let it take you, James. Elias muttered, it already has. Samuel's wide eyes darted to the shadows, whispering, I see him. The ground trembled as a whispering voice echoed, neither wind nor man. James Carter shouted, show yourself. Samuel Lee screamed, it's behind us. Clara Dawson cried out, the curse doesn't need flesh, it has us already. Elias Boone staggered, clutching his chest, I feel him clawing at my soul. Sheriff Douglas Kane barked, weakness is death, I won't fall like you. The whisper became a roar, as dust exploded upward, blinding them. James grabbed Samuel's arm, yelling, stay close. Clara collapsed to her knees, whispering, the dead man is here. Elias Boone sank to the ground, trembling, forgive me. The storm quieted for a heartbeat, as the voice whispered clearly, blood calls to blood. James Carter's face drained of color as he muttered, he speaks. Clara Dawson said, it's him, the one you buried. Samuel Lee shook violently, we shouldn't be here. Elias Boone's voice broke, I took the shot, I ended him. The air grew heavier, pressing on their lungs. Sheriff Douglas Kane laughed bitterly, you ended nothing, ghosts don't die. James turned, shouting, it was you who framed him, Sheriff. Clara cried, the curse was born from your greed. Samuel gasped, then it wants Kane. The canyon roared as the howl returned, shaking stone loose from the cliffs. James Carter shouted, we can't run, not now. Samuel Lee screamed, it's going to kill us. Clara Dawson stood firm, declaring, the curse feeds on lies. Speak the truth or it will consume us. Elias Boone wept, I pulled the trigger, and I've lived with it every day since. James said, and Kane told you the man was guilty when he wasn't. Sheriff Douglas Kane's face twisted with rage, he was guilty of standing against me. Clara's voice cut like a blade, and now his vengeance is here. The wind screamed as the canyon plunged into darkness. The canyon air grew cold, unnatural in the desert dawn. James Carter whispered, "He is here among us." Samuel Lee gasped, "I feel his breath, though he has no body." Clara Dawson's eyes widened as she said, "It's not just a curse. It's a man's soul crying for truth." Elias Boone shook, muttering, "I killed him, but I didn't choose the target. Kane's lies drove me." Sheriff Douglas Kane's face darkened. "You were a fool who followed orders." James' voice roared, "And you gave them." A ghostly figure shimmered in the dust, half-formed, a man's shadow clawing upward. Samuel screamed, "He's rising!" Clara whispered, "The dead walk tonight." The ghostly figure grew clearer, its eyes burning like coals. James Carter whispered, "He wants the truth spoken aloud." Clara Dawson said, "The truth binds curses, not bullets." Elias Boone dropped his rifle, voice breaking, "I pulled the trigger, but I was Kane's pawn." Samuel Lee trembled, "Then the curse belongs to Kane." Sheriff Douglas Kane shouted, "Lies! He was guilty of standing in my way." James snarled, "You murdered him to steal his land." Clara cried, "The ghost returns for justice, not revenge." The spirit's voice echoed, "Blood for land, greed for death." Samuel sobbed, "He speaks." The spirit's form sharpened, his torn clothes fluttering in spectral wind. James Carter said, "Speak his name, he deserves it." Clara Dawson whispered, "Daniel Hayes." Elias Boone bowed his head, sobbing, "Forgive me, Daniel." Sheriff Douglas Kane growled, "He was nothing but a thief." James roared, "He was your brother." Silence fell as the words struck like a bullet. Samuel Lee gasped, "Your brother?" Clara whispered, "That's the truth Kane feared." Elias Boone shouted, "You betrayed your blood for land." Kane's face twisted in rage, "He betrayed me first." The spirit wailed, shaking the canyon. Daniel Hayes' spirit screamed, a sound of anguish and fury, shaking stone loose from the cliffs. James Carter held steady, yelling, "He knows the truth now." Clara Dawson shouted, "Kane's betrayal cursed this land." Samuel Lee cried, "Then Kane must answer." Elias Boone shouted through tears, "Confess before it destroys us." Sheriff Douglas Kane raised his revolver, pointing at the ghost, screaming, "You deserved the dirt, Daniel." The spirit advanced, its burning eyes locked on Kane. James roared, "You can't kill the dead, Sheriff." Clara whispered, "But the dead can kill you." Samuel fell back in terror as the spirit's shadow stretched across them all. The canyon darkened as Daniel Hayes' spirit loomed, his voice thundering, "Blood betrays blood." James Carter shouted, "Kane, confess or perish." Samuel Lee screamed, "He's going to tear us apart." Clara Dawson stood tall, crying, "Only truth can end this." Elias Boone fell to his knees, sobbing, "We buried an innocent under lies." Sheriff Douglas Kane's hands shook, but his pride chained him. He spat, "I'd betray him again." The spirit roared, the canyon collapsing with fury. James shouted, "Then it ends with your blood." Clara whispered, "The curse has found its master." Samuel covered his ears, wailing, "It's too late." The canyon floor shook violently as the spirit of Daniel Hayes advanced, glowing like fire through smoke. James Carter shouted, "It ends tonight." Samuel Lee clutched his rifle, screaming, "We can't fight this." Clara Dawson's voice rang out, "Only truth can free us." Elias Boone staggered forward, crying, "I confess my sin. I fired the shot that stole your life." Sheriff Douglas Kane raised his revolver, face twisted, yelling, "And I'll bury you again." James roared, "You cannot silence vengeance." The spirit howled, a blast of wind striking them all to their knees. Samuel gasped, "He wants Kane." Clara whispered, "Then let him take what he is owed." The spirit's voice thundered, "Blood betrays blood." James Carter shouted, "Confess, Kane!" Samuel Lee yelled, "It won't stop until you do." Clara Dawson cried, "Your silence is our death." Elias Boone dropped his rifle, whispering, "Speak before we are consumed." Sheriff Douglas Kane shook with rage, screaming, "He betrayed me first." James shouted, "He was your brother, and you killed him for land." Clara's tears fell as she whispered, "Your greed cursed us all." Samuel cried out, "The dead won't rest until you speak the truth." The spirit's burning eyes locked on Kane, the canyon trembling with fury. The cliffs split as rocks tumbled down. James Carter pulled Samuel Lee aside, shouting, "Stay alive, boy." Samuel stammered, "It wants him, not us." Clara Dawson faced the ghost, screaming, "Justice is his, not vengeance." Elias Boone collapsed, sobbing, "I see his face, every night, every dream." Sheriff Douglas Kane fired his revolver at the spirit, bullets slicing through smoke and light. James yelled, "You can't kill the dead, Kane." The spirit's laughter echoed, shaking the canyon. Samuel covered his ears, crying, "It's not human." Clara whispered, "It's justice made flesh." James raised his revolver, aiming not at the spirit but at Kane. The ghost surged closer, its shadow engulfing Kane. James Carter shouted, "Confess before it destroys us all." Samuel Lee yelled, "It's tearing the canyon apart." Clara Dawson stood tall, declaring, "The truth binds the curse. Speak it now." Elias Boone raised his hands in surrender, whispering, "Forgive us, Daniel." Sheriff Douglas Kane's voice cracked as he screamed, "Yes, I killed you for your land." The spirit wailed, a sound of grief and fury colliding. James shouted, "The truth is spoken." Clara whispered, "Now the curse will choose." Samuel held his breath, eyes wide, waiting for judgment. The ghost of Daniel Hayes roared, his spectral hand striking Kane, lifting him from the ground. James Carter shouted, "It's judgment!" Samuel Lee screamed, "He's killing him!" Clara Dawson whispered, "The curse claims its master." Elias Boone wept, "May God forgive us all." Sheriff Douglas Kane's screams echoed as the spirit dragged him into the storm of dust and shadow. James lowered his revolver, breathing heavily, "It is done." Samuel whispered, "But at what cost?" Clara said softly, "The land will remember blood always." Elias Boone fell to his knees, broken, muttering, "The dead never forgive." The canyon fell silent but for the wind. The storm died suddenly, leaving the canyon in silence. James Carter lowered his revolver and whispered, "It's over." Samuel Lee panted, clutching his chest, "I thought we'd all die here." Clara Dawson stepped forward, her voice soft. The curse claimed what it was owed. Elias Boone knelt in the dust, muttering, "No curse ever truly ends, not for those who sinned." James stared into the fading mist, his eyes heavy with sorrow. Kane's blood was only payment. The land still remembers. Samuel trembled, whispering, "Will it come for us too?" Clara touched his arm gently, "Not if we live with truth." They walked slowly out of the canyon, the sun breaking through clouds above. James Carter said, "We leave this place behind, but it will never leave us." Samuel Lee asked quietly, "Do we tell the town what happened?" Clara Dawson replied, "The truth must be spoken, or the curse will return." Elias Boone whispered, "Truth will damn me as much as Cain." James placed a hand on his shoulder, saying, "It's better to be damned by truth than haunted by lies." Samuel nodded faintly, muttering, "Then we carry it together." Clara raised her eyes toward the sky, whispering, "May Daniel rest now." The town greeted them with fear as villagers whispered, "What happened?" James Carter answered grimly, "The curse claimed its master." Samuel Lee said, "But truth saved the rest of us." Clara Dawson added, "Greed poisoned this town, but it can heal if we let it." Elias Boone muttered, "Healing leaves scars all the same." James' voice carried, "Cain betrayed his own blood, the dead returned for justice." Murmurs spread, some fearful, some relieved. Samuel whispered, "They'll never look at us the same." Clara's eyes hardened, "They shouldn't." James whispered, "At least now the land is free of his shadow." Night fell again, and James Carter sat alone by the well, staring at the stars. He muttered, "The dead never truly leave." Samuel Lee approached, asking, Will the curse come again? James sighed. Not if truth guides us. Clara Dawson appeared, saying softly, Truth doesn't erase guilt, but it stops it from growing. Elias Boone joined them slowly, his voice heavy. I'll carry his face to my grave. James looked at each of them, murmuring, We all will. Samuel whispered, Then we live with it together. Clara nodded, her eyes tired but resolute. Together we endure. As dawn returned, James Carter saddled his horse, looking back at the silent town. Samuel Lee said, Where will you go? James replied, Wherever the road takes me, far from curses and lies. Clara Dawson whispered, You can't outrun ghosts, James. He paused, his voice quiet, No, but I can carry them. Elias Boone stood behind, muttering, The land holds the blood, but the living hold the guilt. James tipped his hat, saying, Then may we carry it lighter each day. He rode into the sunrise, dust rising behind him. Clara whispered, He walks with ghosts now. Samuel muttered, And so do we.